What's good, everybody? Welcome to Colored Commentary and Colorful Conversations by colorful people about Christianity, culture, and race. I'm your host, Markus, Lloyd, and with me, as always, in studio is Mr. Antwuan.
What's up? What's up, Colored Commentary family?
The family.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. And for those of you who are listening to this, you may not notice that Antwuan and I are wearing some shirts.
I'm gonna move my mic.
So you're gonna move your mic so they
I'm so
can
glad
see?
you guys are wearing shirts.
Thank you.
We do have
as
shirts.
the audience is too.
We do have
honestly.
shirts on. Everyone,
Yeah, there it is. But he's got his a color commentary T-shirt on there, and I've got a threaded polo. Threaded being the organization that powers this wonderful podcast. Excited about that. If you too,
shout out to the black shirt.
Okay.
The white
You got to finish it
on
up.
top of it. With just black. Shout out to the black, and then everybody's like, yeah.
You're like, I thought this was color commentary. We're supposed to be using all kinds of different things. Yeah, everything. We'll see if we can get other colored shirts too. It doesn't have to be just black shirts. I get it, but
some people feel great in black.
I know. It's slimming and all the stuff.
Is that what it is?
That's what people say.
I feel confident.
But look, hey, at Threaded, we have the merch, right? So you can check us out at wearethreaded.org/shop. I totally did an Arby's rip.
I know.
I wanted my Bing Rames.
I was gonna let you make it.
Threaded, we have the merch. That's it. That's what it is.
That's Bing Rames.
That's Bing Rames. That's right. So I was doing my presentation. Yeah,
I'm gonna let you have it.
But I want people, we got some cool stuff on there. I know, Pep, you got your little crop.
Crop sweatshirt.
Yeah, crop hoodie. Got a little threaded. You can get some color commentary. We're going to be working on some merch that's going to be specifically kind of racial advocacy merch, right? So we're going to be putting some things together that are coming. So, man, go check it out. Get you some Christmas gifts or anything. Your Thanksgiving gifts, your Halloween gifts. I mean, whatever.
Thanksgiving gifts? Is that a thing?
I don't think it is.
I don't think that's a thing.
But maybe we can
It's how it started, though. Like, according to the lore.
Oh, that's true.
According to the
lore. It was people bringing
according
gifts.
to the lore, it was just two neighbors finding each other and just getting gifts for each other of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, you have a cornucopia, if you will, of threaded merch that you can bring to your Thanksgiving.
For your Thanksgiving.
And be able to start a conversation, which ultimately is what this episode is going to be about. This can be the way you kind of start the conversation going forward. But before we get into
you got to tell us what you love, though. Like, if you tell us, like, we need to get the comments up. So, like, I want to hear what you bought. I want to hear which thing you like.
Or what you want.
I was just going to say that. Or
I really want a crew neck. I'm going to put a crew neck in there.
Yeah.
I like crew necks, too.
You want to?
Do we not have crew necks?
Is this not a crew?
No.
Is this
sweatshirt.
Oh.
Crew neck sweatshirt.
Oh, sweatshirt. Okay. Oh, okay. That's not
What
This
other-
means sweatshirt.
What other kind of sweatshirt is it, though? Like,
you got a
hoodie.
hoodies.
Or a
Hoodies are
zip
what-
up. Or a quarter zip.
If not, I got
All right.
it.
She's
Got it.
she's from Maine, like sweatshirts and warm
Our
gear.
thing, yes.
She's got it all. Okay, a crew neck
The
sweatshirt.
ladies like the little oversized. I don't know if that's your thing, but is that what it?
I
The
don't-
oversized,
Sweatshirt
something
thing.
comfortable. I
Not,
guess.
though, the ones that we purchased at Christmas.
You didn't like those?
I did not like those.
I love
For what I
those.
wanted it to
So-
look
These
like.
were the
They were
blue
great
ones?
quality. They were
Yes.
beautiful. They were lightweight for Texas, but it was not a thick,
I disagree.
structured.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't disagree with this
Sweatshirt.
assessment, but I actually
I love
thought-
this.
thought those
I want to
were
go
great
on record
sweatshirts.
to
Those
put-
blue ones.
I really like the blue ones.
I will rock
I do
those.
want to go. I'm going to record. She used the royal we when she said it. She said the ones that we ordered. I just need to be clear.
Okay.
Somebody ordered those. And
it was only one of us.
Only one of us in the studio ordered them, and the one that doesn't like them is the one.
I'll tell you what, though, they're not as bad as the mugs that I ordered a couple years ago.
I'm not going to talk
Those
about the
are-
mugs. I promise we wouldn't have that
Wait, the
conversation.
mugs with the color change?
No, not
No?
the color.
okay.
Those are the color commentary. Which
I know.
I don't know if we
They
got those in the show.
They stopped
making them. Okay.
Oh.
Nah, these were
I
just
have one
threaded
at the
mugs.
house, though.
I bet you do.
And I have
when they come back,
another one.
folks, we will make color commentary.
Anyway.
Color change. I think a color change
Black
mug
to white.
is absolutely appropriate.
It's on brand. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to tell you, man. Like, you said, do something new.
Some people are going to be offended. Like you telling people they
Put
got
the
to
hot
change
water
colors,
in it, and
all of a sudden it turns what color?
that's a foreshadow for you.
Wait, what color does it turn when you put the hot water?
No,
when you
it's
bring
just,
the heat.
it's just when you bring the heat, it just goes from black to whatever the color the mug is.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you're saying other people, not black people, bring the heat?
No, I'm not.
You're
I'm not going to decode it at this. It just
Which brings us to the segment that we start off with, which is
Say what?
Say what? That's what,
that's what that was. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about?
Hey,
With this color changing mug?
I'm excited. We've got actually a sponsor for this. First sponsor.
Hey.
I feel like there should be a sound here.
Well, maybe we'll put one in. We'll see.
I don't know.
That sounds like that sound from
Is that
like
Price is Right?
Right. That's what it.
That's when you lose.
That's right. So
that's not
maybe
good
it's the
then.
other one. Dun, 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 dun,
Dun, dun.
That you can't do more than 8 notes though, because then we have to pay somebody. For it. So
it was
so
two of us. So
Fun
that's
fact.
fair. I did one and you did one, so we're good. All right, this segment of Say What comes to us from K Immigration Law. That's right. Do you or someone you know need an expert with your immigration journey? Then K Immigration Law is here for you. From U.S. citizenship to green cards to asylum to work visas, the K Immigration Law team is ready to navigate the complexities of immigration law with you. Man, Antwuan, for you, whether you're adjusting your status, seeking humanitarian relief, Pepper, or need support with your non-immigrant visas, Schmevin, Alice K and her team at K Immigration Law offers personalized and reliable service every step of the way. So, don't wait. Go get the guidance you need to secure your future. Visit k-immigration.com and make your appointment today. That's KAY-immigration.com, your trusted partner in immigration. Hey,
it's very nice.
I like it.
Look at you. You nailed it. It's like you've done those before.
Well, I've had a little experience.
What I learned from that little spot right there is that Schmevin and I must be immigrants. You spoke,
I just needed to connect
you
with
spoke
somebody.
to us.
I
So
never realized that.
Yeah.
I feel like I was like, maybe I need K immigration.
Yeah, you might. Everybody needs.
Maybe I should call.
You should. You should try to get some of your status figured out.
Get it going.
All right, so we're in our Say What segment. Pepper, put some pepper on it. What do we have to do? Just to be clear, K Immigration Law did not say this next thing.
That's true. That's true.
They're just paying bills today for us, right?
true.
So I just
Do we need
want
like a drum roll? We need I want a sound before I'll say what. Can
why
we
are you
just get
making
that? Say
Kevin?
what?
You're working Schmevin work so hard.
Lots of
Listen,
sounds.
everybody,
Lots of
if I
sounds.
have to work hard, everybody has to work hard.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Why do we have to keep looking back in this racial conversation? Wouldn't it be better if we move forward?
You know what? When I first hear things like that, what the unfiltered version in my head says, well, I don't know how unfiltered it is. This is still somewhat filtered, but my first thought is, what do you think we're doing? What do you think this is? This is forward.
That's
like
right.
that. Like nobody's going backwards to stay there.
Yeah.
Like we're bringing up the backwards in order to move forward. Like I don't want to visit the ugly past anymore than anyone else does. I certainly don't want to visit the ugly past just for the sake of staying there.
No, it's not fun.
It's not fun. So the first thought is, why do you assume that we're not moving forward? Was my first retort internally in my head, and I usually have to kill that and just try to be more understanding. But for this segment, for my part of it anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Like, bro, like we are moving forward. Why do you not think this is moving forward?
Yeah, it's a hard one to do, right? Because it goes to that sort of framework of simplistic, complex, simple, right? I think there's a simplistic way of saying it, like, oh, we just need to move forward. But to move forward, particularly in a situation like this, there's a lot of complexity that's actually at play in the midst of it. And you've got to go through that complexity before you can actually give a simple answer to it.
Right.
Right. And so, you think about it in lots of things that you think about in life, right? Like you can think about it in terms of your health, right? If you get to a certain point in your health and you go to the doctor, it's like, hey, I'm ready to move forward. And he's like, well, let me tell you how you got here, right? Like there's lots of different things that happen to get you here. And what happens is if you don't stop doing these things that you were doing in the past, it doesn't matter what I tell you to do going forward, because you're going to just keep finding yourself in the same situation because you actually haven't fixed the habits that got you here in the first place.
Right.
Same thing when you go to your car, right? Like if you don't get your oil changed or your tires rotated, then you're going to find that as you go forward, something bad is going to happen to your car in the engine from the oil change, or your tires are going to wear out quickly. And you're going to be like, man, every time I come in here, y'all are telling me something wrong with my car. Just fix it. And they're like, look, sir, if you would just do the routine maintenance on your car,
right,
well, we wouldn't be here. So I need to tell you why your routine maintenance didn't actually, what the problems it created because you didn't do it, so that when I give you a solution going forward, you maintain and do the routine maintenance. So I think so much of the conversation, the reason we're here, and it's true with most anything in our life, the reason that we're here is because of things that happened in the past. every now and then I walk with a limp. You know why? Because I played football and I took some hits on my knees, and so they get achy when the weather changes, things like that, right? Well, that's because of something that happened in history. That's what explains it. So I think the same in the racial conversation. When we look at what we're looking at, it seems really simple to go, okay, let's just throw everything out that ever happened, and let's just start where we are now. But the effects of what we didn't do right historically are still at play today. Not for everybody and not in the same way, but they're still at play. And so if we don't understand those effects, then we don't know how to, if you will, subscribe the right solution or the right medicine for the sickness that we're dealing with to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, the truth is, I love everything you said. And I think that there are some things in the past that you could leave in the past.
Sure.
So you don't have to revisit everything. Not you know what I mean? Like some things could be left. But there are some other things from the past that need to be looked at if you're actually going to deal with what's in front of you, like you're saying. Like, I'm also thinking about Rafiki. Like, he's like...
Rafiki from Lion King?
Yeah, man. He give the lesson to Simba. He's like... He whaps him on the head and he said, "Why'd you do that?" He says, "It doesn't matter. It's in the past." Yeah, he's like, and that's the whole lesson. The whole way. I mean, you went there. The whole lesson Rafiki was trying to make is that the past can hurt, but you have to face it. You can't run from it. You have to go back to deal with it. So, so Disney has helped us
as always. They've always got some.
The Lion King finds its way in so many of
your
analogies.
conversations.
Yeah, but it is a good point in the story that Simba's running away from his past, and in order to get to his future, he's actually got to face that past, and deal with it to find his place and all that stuff. And I think there's a kind of connectedness to the race conversation where, in order for us to deal with the ongoing influx of racial diversity in our nation, we have to look back at how we've poorly dealt with that, even if it looks slightly different.
Sure.
In order to not, at minimum, make the same mistakes that we were making.
Right.
Because we're going to be presented with similar new faces to similar challenges.
Yeah.
At the very minimum, we have to be able to move forward and evolve in a safe way, and that is very forward and futuristic thinking. But also, yes, there's reconciliation and there's animus and difficulty that we need to overcome, and that takes looking back at history as well. If you're married and you have a difficulty in your marriage, you don't just say, "Hey, we're going to start over right now and go forward." Like, you've got to deal with the yesterday of your marriage, the habits that yesterday formed, the ways you've changed, the way you looked at your spouse, the way you talk, all those things that have happened you've been conditioned over time to deal with each other a certain type of way over years, that just saying, "Hey, we're going to stop today and move forward," doesn't quite work. You've got to work through all of that. There's so much more that's happening than just the face, the front or what's on the face of the issue.
Veneer.
Yeah, there's these other things. And so, yeah, we have to look back. We have to look back to see, what has history done to us? What has it taught us? What has it created in us? What environments have it created? How do we undo the unhelpful and unhealthy versions of that in order to move forward and realize the future that we actually are desiring? So, yeah, you got to do it.
I was going to say, if you don't at least see where the mistakes were, you can make all the changes that, like, you can add on and add on and add on. But if you keep making the mistakes, it's going to continue to undermine the future relationship. And so without at least identifying where the problems were so you can stop repeating them, you can't start new without at least eliminating the wrong.
Agree.
And identifying.
Yeah.
First,
the mindset of this person typically is an efficient mindset. I want to be efficient. But this mindset would also say, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's not go do things that other people have done already, or make mistakes other people have made. That's inefficient.
Yeah.
But when you say the mindset isn't just to be efficient, I think sometimes at the root of it, the mindset is a fear of assigning blame.
Absolutely.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
but even if you have the person who's just like, to them it's like, well, let's just solve the problem. Like, to them, they're like, going backward feels like it's a waste of time. Let's just go forward. And you're like, no, it's not a waste of time. It's actually the quickest path to forward. It's not the way. It's not the end around.
Right. You're taking away obstacles. What do they say? Smooth is what is it? Smooth is slow. Slow is fast, or something like that.
Yeah.
Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Right. And so there's a sense of the efficiency. There's an urgency, a short-term fix. They want to get it done in their lifetime. And the things we're talking about, I don't think they're getting done in our lifetime.
Yep.
Particularly if we don't identify, to your point, Shmev, if we don't identify the mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes, and then as we're, presented with new opportunities to make that mistake, that we don't go, hey, I think we've been here before, and we made this mistake.
This smells familiar.
You know what I mean?
I think we've made this mistake.
And what's funny is it's a very American axiom, or maybe, I don't know where it comes from, but I know that we use it in America, is like, if you don't, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. You know what I mean? And from a scriptural standpoint, I mean, we look in the past all the time, right? Like every Christmas and every Easter, we're looking in the past. Yeah. We're understanding even our what we have to deal with in sin today for those who are just born is something that happened in history. It happened at Adam and Eve. In the way that our Jewish brothers and sisters, they do feasts throughout the year where they're constantly thinking back to when they were in slavery in Egypt. They have a whole feast about this, God reminding them of what he did for them. So they think about it because it reminds us not just of the bad things, but looking back also can be a place where we can go, look what good things we did here. Yeah. How do we repeat that as well? And maybe that's part of the conversation that doesn't usually come in to Kevin, to your point, where people go, when you look back in the past, you're going to identify the problems, you're going to identify someone who's at the blame for that. But you can also do the same thing with the good things. You can go back in our American history past and you can identify when people did really good things to undo some of the bad things and identify who gets the blame for that as well, if you will. Yeah. And I think from a conversation where many times it's white people not wanting to look in the past, I think white people can get the blame for the things that were incorrect, but they also get a lot of blame for the things that were correct, that are helpful and corrective for that, along with others as well. So that's moving us in the forward. And remember, that comes to you not from K Immigration Law, but sponsored by K Immigration Law, right? Your trusted partner in immigration. Check it out. So that has been another segment of Say What?
Saith what?
Saith what? Fantastic.
All righty.
All right. Hey, Antwuan, I'm excited. We are in the series Christianity on the Public Square.
Yes.
And we got a pretty cool guest.
What week
coming
is this?
It's been a week. Don't name a week because we may have to move things around.
That's true.
And all I know is we in the series.
We
right
in
now.
it.
Okay.
We in it.
And we're having a fun conversation.
Yes.
Today we're going to be talking about like how to have effective political discourse, like how to have conversation, right. The thing everybody loves to have in the midst of election times or political uproar is, hey, why don't we talk about this with people we don't know or don't believe?
It's that old rule, like you're not supposed to talk about politics and religion.
Yeah. So we're going to do both.
We're way out of practice as a nation and as a society. We're like, we don't do that here, sir.
But we're going to do it today.
But we're going to do it
today. Or at least find out how to do it. All right. So let me get us our guest is coming in. Now, our guest, there's a lot here, as our guests tend to be. So this is fun. I'm going to read some of this stuff. Those of you who are in the audio version, I'm reading this. So this person is a senior fellow for public practice at Braver Angels. All right. This is an organization that brings Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. Right. I've actually had engagement with them, and I'll talk a little bit about my engagement. She's the author of this. Check out this title, Antwuan. I love this title. Yeah. I never thought of it that way. How to have fearlessly curious conversations in dangerously divided times.
Love that.
I'm telling you.
The title is.
Yeah.
I never thought of it that way.
I never thought.
I didn't want people to miss that. They may have
thought I was actually just saying.
You indeed never thought of it that way.
Quote, I never thought of it that way all the way to the end, unquote, right? She actually has a pretty good, cool TED Talk as well, right? I checked it out. It's called How Curiosity Will Save Us. And so people got to check that out as well. Yeah. Co-founder of Evergrey. This is a local media project to help folks in Seattle make the most of their city. She's a former columnist for the Seattle Times, a recent fellow at Harvard's, I think it's Nieman Foundation for Journalism, and the Henry M. Jackson Foundation. Above all that, she's a mom, right? Yeah. She got two kids, excited. And for our show, it's probably fun to know she's an immigrant with a dual U.S.-Mexican citizenship. So that's pretty cool. So Monica Guzman, welcome to Color Commentary. How you doing, Monica?
I'm doing so well. How's it going?
Oh, man. Doing really good. Excited to have you here on the show. So much wonderful stuff in the midst of...
Quite the resume.
I know.
Did you come up with the name of your book, or was that someone else?
You know what? It's amazing. I did, and everyone told me your publisher's going to hate it.
Oh, wow.
They're going to hate it. They're going to make you change it. They didn't. They loved
That's
it.
amazing.
I love that title. I think it's so great.
And usually you don't get to keep the title that
The
you
name
have.
that you have,
I know.
yeah.
You thought about it.
Yes.
You've been working on it. You're like, oh, I really love this. Publisher's like, nah, people won't ever buy that book.
Exactly.
That's right.
No, I so lucked out. I still can't believe it was that easy.
Now, hey, I mean, based on what I gave in your resume, is it safe to say that you're in Seattle right now? Is that the good spot? Okay. Home sweet home. Okay, you've been in Seattle. Now I know that you've been traveling a little bit. As we've been kind of getting this thing together, like where have you been so far?
Oh yeah, I've been in India the last month. Just got back a couple days ago. It was intense and amazing and beautiful. And we have friends who used to live near us here in Seattle and moved to India. So they gave us sort of the locals insider track all over the place.
Oh, so these friends are actually Indian as well.
That's right.
Okay.
And they live in Bangalore, which is sort of the Silicon Valley of India in the south.
Wow.
And boy, the traffic woes and the people, the kids, the familial stuff, the religions. There's so many.
Yeah,
it was just beautiful.
Yeah, I have not been to India yet. I am fascinated by the environment because of everything you said. I feel like, when people talk about culture, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, cultures have certain things. Like one of the places I automatically think of is India. I feel like, if you're thinking about places that just have very definitive types of cultural things that you can point to, like India seems like a spot. I mean, I'm thinking clothing, I'm thinking language, I'm thinking religion, like there's food, like so much. I mean, is that a fair thing to say as far?
No, I had exactly the same thoughts so many times while I was there. To give one example, there's women in India, whether they are, low socioeconomic class or very wealthy, are wearing like traditional clothing really proudly. Like saris and kurtis. I got a kurti, right? And, some of this clothes like hard to put on or whatever. But this is how you are regal. This is how you are awesome. And I'm from Mexico, and in Mexico, like traditional Mexican clothing, you don't see that anymore, right? Like other cultures have come in and sort of, just kind of done a thing. So it's really cool to see these cultures with really, really, really deep roots going back and back and back and back, still celebrated, still alive.
Really I think that's really interesting because to your point, like when I think about to loosely use the word Hispanic culture, there's such a mestizaje, right? Like there's such a mixedness in the midst of it. So that's what you're talking about, these cultures. But India seems to, look, I'm using these words and I understand that people are going to push it. It feels like the culture's a bit more confined, if you will, or pure, or it hasn't been touched as much. And I know that colonialism went through all of that, right? But that's what I'm picturing, though, like it almost maintains so much of its culture in there. In the midst of it.
I think there's something to that. And I learned that more in the south than the north in some ways, because the north of India was conquered a lot. The south of India was like tough to get to all these things.
That's right.
So South India has even deeper roots, like a proud food culture and all these things. And oh man, I have stories. It was just incredible.
Well, India's got such a great engagement. I mean, the conquering, the Chinese came through there at one point, but even for a Christian standpoint, which we work in, the South is such an interesting place. It's the place where ultimately Thomas was given the credit for bringing Christianity into that space. And so India just has so much amazing things. And so you got two kids, boys, girls?
12-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl.
Okay. And you took them to India. How did they respond? What was their response? Or is that a tough question?
I mean, you asked my 12-year-old now, and it's just a laundry list of everything he hated. But that's the kid.
It's a 12-year-old.
Yes. He's so glad to be home.
Yeah.
That's the teenager
today. Tomorrow he'll not be.
So I mean, he'll start off with the weather and how terrible that was. But once you get down that, he and my daughter will tell you like the temples that we went to. We went to Hindu temples. We went to Buddhist monasteries. We went to Sikh Gurudwaras. We went, everywhere. The Baha'i faith, which celebrates all faiths.
Right.
we just went in, and you can't take photos in any of these places. So we can't like show our friends.
Yeah.
But our friend who is Indian, who led us in a way to even come to India, she is a practicing Hindu. So we celebrated Krishna's birthday with her. We did an arati on the banks of the Ganges River, which is sacred to Hindus. All these amazing things, and to have it be a faith that is not mine and that I don't fully understand.
Yeah.
It pulled my curiosity in ways you wouldn't believe. Like, I'm surrounded by people practicing their devotion, and I'm doing the ritual because I'm there with my friend, and I have so many questions, and I can't ask them right now because it's a very, very reverent moment.
Yeah.
But later, boy, it's just like rapid fire. So my kids were the same way, my daughter would come out and be like, what was that, Mom? Like, what does this mean? Why do I have something in the middle of my forehead? Why did we give an offering? What's going on with the water that comes out of that god Shiv's head? What is this?
Yeah.
So, boy, that was probably, to me, one of the best gifts to my kids, is to be in a place where just being in the place sparks infinite questions.
Yes. And see, that's such an interesting thing, right? You use the word curiosity, right? So that's so much of when I'm kind of researching you and engaging and listening and reading, I hear this kind of work of curiosity and engaging, right? How does that work? How does that play into what you do regularly? Like how would you, if somebody say, okay, what's a day in the life of Monica Guzman look like? Like, what do you do? What do you spend your time doing the most of?
Oh, man. Well, I do feel like I live and breathe curiosity, because it really is the heart and soul of my book, which was a book that felt like it just had to come out of me. And so I let it. I gave birth to it. And as far as a day-to-day, I host a podcast called A Braver Way. And the mission of the podcast is to equip people with the tools they need to bridge the political divide. A lot of my day-to-day is preparing the episodes. We have a new one today. Making sure that we're, ahead of the clock on the production calendar, listening to our listeners. What kind of needs do they have? Hearing so much anxiety about the election. But really, it's can we be curious? Can we be curious within ourselves about our own beliefs and assumptions? Can we also be curious about other people, including and especially people we don't understand, to make sure that we don't end up making projections, right, out into those other human beings, projections that are not reality. That's sort of something that's spread all around, and it's always been with us. It's just particularly pernicious right now. So, a lot of it is the podcast. I also, because of the book, thanks to the book, it's been a really popular pick for college reading programs across the country.
That's cool.
So this fall, I'm going to several universities where freshmen have been reading my book. Vanderbilt University in Nashville next week, Mount Holyoke later this fall, the University of the Pacific, University of Delaware maybe next year. So there's going to be a lot of school visits, a lot of talking with students, a lot of, getting into generational divides, getting into all kinds of different places where people unsee each other because there's something they don't understand.
Right. You actually, as I was listening to your podcast, or not podcast, your TED Talk, there was a particular phrase that you said that got a lot of applause that I think goes engaged with you. You probably remember it. It says, whoever is underrepresented in your life will be overrepresented in your imagination. Right. Talk about that. I think that speaks to what you were in many ways talking about. What does that mean to you? How did you come to that?
Yeah. First of all, you should know that I didn't know until I gave that talk. You can actually see a little bit of surprise.
Yeah.
That people clapped in the middle.
I know it. I was like, what? Yeah. It was a dope phrase. You know what I mean? Like a great turn of phrase.
Apparently. But it's really the heart of something that is hard for us to face, which is that we can only know what we see and what we understand and what we have taken time to open ourselves to. And a lot of times our minds make their own judgments and assumptions. We don't even notice that they're not well informed, but we have all kinds of emotions that flow from those assumptions, chiefly in our politics and across a lot of divides, fear. There's a lot of fear of the other, a lot of fear of the person on the other side who's voting for the other candidate.
Right.
They're out to get us. They want to destroy America. There's all these things. But that will often be, right, there will often be accompanied by, a life where you don't know that many of people, and if you do know people who are on the other side, you haven't talked to them in a way where you can really hear and be heard.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to just like, no, I've talked to them.
Yeah.
I've talked to my uncle, I've talked to my son, and we've like had it out and whatever, and it just got nowhere.
You've talked at them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or over them. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the truth is, everybody wants to be heard. Mm-hmm. It's a deep human need. Mm-hmm. And it's extraordinary what happens when we have the patience and the courage to get into a space in a conversation where we do this thing that seems so controversial, but is necessary, which is if you want to get into a conversation, curious conversation with another person, you have to accept them on some baseline level right now in that moment. Right. You have to accept them. And for a lot of folks, it's like, if I know that you voted for whoever,
right,
I can't accept you at all. And so that prevents me from understanding you, which, by the way, prevents me from ever influencing you or persuading you to think more like me. There's no way, because you'll know that I'm just out to get you, to shame you. Why would you want to be around me?
See, and you have an interesting, just personal version of this, right? Like, you're talking about election, who people voted for. You are a dual citizen, Mexican immigrant, but your parents, they have a way they voted that I think many people may not connect with. So talk a little bit about that, and that may help us even transition.
Right. So I'm liberal, and I've voted for Democratic candidates in presidential elections, as long as I've been able to. And my parents are very conservative and voted for Trump. And we're all Mexican immigrants. In Seattle in 2017, there were like get-togethers, and I would go and just hang out with people, and I would hear people talk about, these things that were happening in the headlines. Seattle's a very democratic place, very liberal, right? I really related to that. But inevitably, because people were so scared and anxious, the conversation would go from sort of the latest outrageous headline and Trump this and Trump that to the people who voted for Trump, those monsters.
Wow.
And what I sensed in myself, and this is one of the reasons the book had to come out of me, is I started feeling kind of hurt. Something in my gut was like, ouch, And I thought to myself, wait, what? Why am I agree in a way, right? Like I don't like that guy. I voted for the other guy.
Sure.
I really don't like the guy, and I'm really scared too, and all these things. But I realized I felt that way because when they were saying awful things about people who were voting for Trump, they were saying awful things about my parents.
Yeah.
And my parents are wonderful people. They're really, really great. And I've had the kind of conversations over the years just where I understand why they voted the way they voted. They understand why I voted the way I voted. We super disagree. We still get into arguments all the time.
Y'all still eat together?
Oh,
do you still do Thanksgiving, Christmas together?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it hasn't broken up the relationship?
No.
Okay.
No. In fact, in a weird way, and again, I know I'm like, oh, maybe we're going too far too fast here, but I feel like because of the disagreements, we know each other way better. Like that relationship shift that goes from when parents and kids, your parent, your kid, your parent and your kid. But as your kids grow up, eventually you're adult and adult and adult and adult.
Right.
I feel like that's only getting stronger because we're able to talk about the real deep down things that have led us to very different places in our politics.
Wow. I mean, I think that's like for many people hearing that conversation, I'm sure there's lots of folks in our audience, particularly that have broken relationships with their family because of the conversation around political discourse specifically. How do you do it? Like, how did you do it in your environment? Like, what are some of the ways in which you can maybe give them some hope that either A, you can make it work for people who you disagree with inside of your family, or, and again, you may not have had to go through this, but is there a way that people even mend the brokenness that's there that you've seen? Yeah.
No, there is. And let me first say that, in sharing my story and my particular experience, no part of me is saying that this is easy or even accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
I have very close friends who have broken relationships in their family. They're very sad about it.
Yeah.
But when you look at the circumstances of their lives, the decision makes sense, right? But I will say, like, the ones that I know anyway still have that hole in their heart, and they're hoping.
Yeah.
I often say that the most important thing to do with a bridge, to another person, is not to cross it, but to keep it, to at least try not to burn it down. You never know. Maybe in a year, 5 years, maybe tomorrow, there might be that little open door. I just heard from someone the other day who I met in Oregon doing my travels. She's very conservative. Her 2 grown kids stopped talking to her. She's been brokenhearted about it. It's been about 2 years. And just a couple weeks ago, she finally got to talk to her son for 20 minutes on the phone. And she's like, she's like holding her breath, like, maybe this is it. Yeah. So you never know when it could come back. But to get to your question about the how, I remember before I even wrote my book, I asked my mom, because I had to do my research.
Yeah,
I don't know the answers. Like, Mom, why do you think that you and I have been able to have, like, deep down conversations about, like, race and policing for 3 hours somehow? Like, how has that?
Wow.
And she said, well, we always acknowledge each other's good points.
Right.
Okay.
And she said it so fast. I was like, whoa, you're right. And it's true. Her and me, my dad a little bit less so. He has other strengths, I suppose. But yeah, her and I, she and I do that quite a bit. So even if I hugely disagree, which she and I do on abortion, for example, giant gap between us. Yeah. But, if she says something that is kind of fresh to me and I hadn't considered, I'll be like, that's a good point. It's a good point, Mom. And so what that does in a conversation is a couple of things. One, if I tell you, we disagree, and I tell you, hey, that's a really good point, you now know that I've heard you. Right?
Yeah.
And so something in you is saying, I'm connecting. Let's keep going. Yeah. So that's really cool. The other thing that happens when I say, hey, that makes sense, like, I get it, that's a fair point, is I'm communicating to you that I'm not here to try to win, try to beat you, it's not a showdown. I'm maybe actually curiously exploring an idea.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Imagine that.
So that can happen.
And I think what's interesting, I think I want to stop on this point, right? And Antwuan, I know that this is a point we've talked about before too, is this the way you enter the conversation?
Yeah.
That mentality of it's not a debate in the sense of, like, you're in a competitive debate like you did in high school, or you're on a stage, right, where you have to, like, you're in a who's going to win, and they're going to raise hands at the end of the day to do it. But there's a different approach, right, to coming into that sort of space.
Yeah, it's kind of this mutual discovery, this mutual curiosity, especially if you come in with an idea that, hey, I have an idea. I've come to a point, but I think we've said before, what if there's more? What if there's more to this that I don't know? Or what if I'm wrong? Or what if I've gotten my facts mixed up? And I love that you brought that up. We've talked about coming into with that mindset, and also a concept we've talked about too is agreeing early. Yeah. And I think agreeing early just gives people respect. In addition to feeling heard and all those things, it just tells people that I don't think you're an idiot. I don't think you are malicious. When you say to someone, you know what, that's a great point, and we don't follow it with a but.
Yes.
We say that's a great point, and we let it live. What it says to the other person is, I think you're a rational, well-meaning, thoughtful person, and what you said I've heard, and I think that does drop the arms down, puts the dukes down a little bit, and suddenly now you become less defensive.
Yeah,
because that's the key. If you have your dukes up, right? Yeah. Then you think you're talking about a political issue. But you think that you're employing logic and reason, but what you're really doing is you versus me.
It's defending
just
yourself.
That primeval. That's it. So you have to get to the point of building trust in a conversation, which the good news is you can do it. Anyone can do it. It often takes more vulnerability. It takes a lot of humility. There's that word. Yeah. People think humility is weakness. Humility is strength. Humility is strength.
Right.
If you want to value the truth more than your own ideas, if you want to grow and learn, if you don't want to be blinded by what you don't see, humility is a strength.
Yeah.
So there's this idea of a desire to grow yourself, right? Like the recognition that I actually don't know everything. And so in conversation, it's an opportunity for me to actually get more perspective about the world, about even myself in the midst of it, that I can't get without talking to somebody who's different than I am. and who has different ideas and thoughts.
Right.
And I know Antwuan says this always really well when we were talking about even this morning, like the thought that you come in with, you were saying this earlier, you're like, this is a theory I have. So a theory means it's not locked. Right. It's just, I'm wrestling with it. Right. We talk about it's in the lab right now.
Yeah.
Like, just in the lab. You know what I mean? And
it's in the lab.
You know what I mean?
That phrase.
Yeah. That trademark, Antwuan, by the way. No, but it just, even in the midst of that, saying like, hey, this is a theory that I got right now. Tell me what you think about it. Opens up that opportunity for some of that conversation.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of research that is proving this, and it's really picking up right now. Julia Minson at Harvard studies receptive language, and hedging language. If you use language that communicates a certain flexibility, it is far more likely that other people in the conversation will do the same thing.
Yeah.
And at that point, it is way easier for all of you to just be exploring, feeling a little bit less personally attacked, less sort of triggered in these ways where I'm in danger here. You're not in danger. You're having a conversation. It's still up to you. Well, I mean, your own mind is in charge of changing itself. I cannot change your mind. This is a huge conception in our language and in our understanding. I cannot change your mind. Only you can change your mind. The only way that I can influence you and your mind and that whole journey is to like get to a point of trust where you can hear my story about how I got to something.
Yeah.
And you decide that some part of that story fits better than the story you were telling yourself previously that got you to your conclusion. Right. That is the way persuasion actually works.
Yeah, that's good.
So, you just have to keep that in mind. Like all of these things that we tend to do where we think that we are being really strong and passionate, where we're shaming and we're attacking and we're defending, it often has the opposite effect of what we think it will have.
Yeah.
So what do you think is
I want to do something real quick.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, which you just made. Incidentally, go ahead.
Just to disarm you because we felt very attacked.
No, I'm setting her up for what I really want to do later. If I tell her it's a good point now, she'll be more ready to hear what I have to say.
Right.
But I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you what is it about? What do you think it is about our environment that makes curiosity so difficult? Why is it so non-intuitive, or maybe even not rewarded, maybe fully all the time?
Oh, that's another question right there.
That's a very good point. I mean, we talked about culture at the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah.
Our culture is not one that rewards this by and large, and we need to change that to support the kind of people we want to be and the kind of discourse we want to have and the kind of democracy we believe in. But I talk in my book about the SOS, the call for help, and it's a handy dandy, stands for something kind of phrase.
Acronym, you got to have it.
I love acronyms.
Me too.
Man.
Thank
They
you.
make things memorable.
Thank you. Hold up. I need everybody on my staff right now to hear what she said about how effective acronyms are. Thank you.
True.
Say it. You love acronyms. Yes.
I love them so much.
Thank you, Monica. We are going to be fast
so
friends.
Oh, I'd love to hear that disagreement.
Yes.
Anyway, so it stands for sorting, othering, and siloing. So these are three forces, very natural dynamics in human nature that have their good sides and their bad sides. And the bad sides are real bad right now. So sorting is the natural human tendency to want to be around people who are like us and not spend as much time with people who are different because, not as comfortable, not as easy to be around. That's how we form friendships and community. Totally natural. Then othering is the tendency to put distance between ourselves and those we deem different. Research has shown that you don't need that much meaningful difference to start to subtly discriminate against whatever the other is. So to give you a stupid example, like when I meet, another parent on the playground at my kid's school, and I realize, that girl's in third grade, just like my daughter. Oh, but she's in the other third grade class. Not as connected to me.
Right.
As if she had told me that she was in my girl's third grade class. Like we just do that. Us versus them is a thing we do. And then siloing is largely about, I'm looking for my phone, I don't know where it is, but it's about the stories that we hear and that we hear in a perverted way, in a skewed way, because of who we're around and who we've put distance between us. So
that's the echo chamber that we're in.
Yeah, exactly. It's just we tend to be in these kinds of spaces. We've, handpicked and curated lists of voices that tend to make us feel good, affirm what we already believe, because that's a lot easier. But over time, boy, like we listen to those voices, we look at people who have different ideas, and they just seem like terrible people.
Wow.
And it's just not true. So we have to, the default settings of our culture and our world are geared toward deepening these things for us, right? So you'll see, for example, zip codes around the United States. Blue zip codes, like more liberal zip codes, are getting bluer. Red zip codes are getting redder. Sure. Right? So in all of these ways, these things are being exacerbated. So the solution, as far as I'm concerned, is, hey, we're still in charge of ourselves. And we can make different choices, and we can decide how to live into different values. And, it can start with something as simple as, like, how much time are you spending in these dopamine rush spaces online that are just bombarding you with judgment? And
so tell me, the first one was sorting. Is that what? I was so caught up on the acronym. I was so excited about it.
Talk about a dopamine rush.
I know. I was really.
I can't concentrate right now.
I was trying to I was writing down. I'm winning. This is great. I'm going to use this as a point in my conversation later. This is going to be great. Yes, in my debate with the
sorting, othering, and
sorting.
silo.
Sorting is the sorting of just one more time.
No, it's the sorting of people. So it's how we tend to. It's also called like birds of a feather phenomenon. Like homophily is another thing. We just like being around people who are similar to us. It's easier.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. It's I like the me and you.
Yes. Okay.
And so I that's the way I've been talking about it here the last few months. But it's like I really like me, and so when I see me and you, I like that.
So if I'm looking at your SOS, you've got sorting, how we kind of sort people in categories to some extent. Othering is once we've sorted you, then we that there's a sense of you are the other, and so we push you away. And then siloing is more of an echo chamber of ideas with the people that we've sorted ourselves into. Is that a fair way to articulate it?
That's right. That's
fantastic. Right. I just needed that for.
I think those are. I love those.
I like that acronym. We might have to add that to our list of acronyms.
She's shaking her head.
Yes.
Really like that, though. I do like that.
It's really. What do you like about it, Pep?
It's not yours, first of all, is what I like.
Wow.
It didn't come from the Markus lab. So immediately.
No,
you see how they deal with me, Monica? You're getting a sense of how this works?
Antwuan said it. Friction is good.
Right? No, I'm just kidding.
We must be really good.
That's right.
What you got? All right,
Antwuan said it earlier, what if I forget? Or what if I'm wrong is one of our acronyms and what we call WAGE. It's the W. And I think about that a lot in my conversations of like, what if I'm wrong? And I like this idea of SOS just to like take a minute and see where I am. Am I in an echo chamber? Am I othering people? That whole thing about like, oh, well, they're in the other third grade class. I do that too. I'm like, well, I guess I don't really have to talk to them because their parents are in the other one. So I'm going to stay over here with this. Yeah, I'm going to stay over here with this classroom. I really like that. But I do have a question.
Yeah, go for it. Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Okay. If at any point in this conversation with others, is there a point where you should not necessarily walk away from the relationship, but like, do you walk away from the conversation? And do you walk away from the conversation not only in that moment, but just across the board? Like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to visit this person in this conversation. Yeah. How do you know when to do that? And how do you do that well?
Yes. Oh, that's an excellent question. I mean, the answer is yes. There are definitely moments. What I sense in my travels and talking to folks is that people are looking for that one standard. Tell me the moment that is universally applicable. I hear this or this happens or this person, who has an identity opposite mine in this way, and I never talk to them, and I do not believe in that. I think that it is individualized, it is personalized, right? Like you may hold one identity that appears to be very opposed in our culture to another identity, but if you have a good relationship with that person, you have a better opening. So anyway, so we don't need to do that to ourselves, just shut ourselves off from ever possibly crossing, but it is very personalized. And honestly, I think the main thing to look at is how sharp, how seasoned, how exercised is your internal radar? Because here's what happens when we get to a point of like the kind of anger, the kind of provocation,
visceral,
the kind of fear.
Yeah.
At that point, productive conversation becomes impossible, at least in that moment.
Right.
It's really, really hard. And so what we often do is externalize that, and we go like, you're too angry, you're too afraid, you're too whatever. No. Let's do it for ourselves, because we can only control ourselves.
Yeah.
So you get to that point where actually, this is kind of the way I sum it up, is heat in a conversation is good. Like the heat of friction, of difference, coming in and clashing. Heat in a conversation is good. The question is it cooking something or is it burning something?
Ooh.
Only you can tell the difference.
Smell
if it's cooking up understanding, right? And people are going, oh, I never thought of it that way. That's a good point. Okay, there's enough trust. We're cooking. It's a simmer, right? But my Instant Pot will tell me if there's not enough liquid in that pot. And it'll say, burn, burn, burn. I'm like, darn it, gotta start the risotto over again. Take it out, give a pause. So that's the thing. We can only know that for ourselves. Everybody has different indicators. So really the practice is pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to your physical. How hard is your heart pounding? Are you feeling physically like I can be here right now? So it can take, with some people, there's been some people in my lives where, honestly, I remember someone I used to work with, if they just showed up on a Zoom screen, my heart would start to pound. Now, that was something I needed to work on. It was like a certain relationship with this person. And at the time, I saw it as sort of her fault. No, I need to work on that. So it's that kind of thing. Is with some people in our lives, it's just what I say is not that it's impossible, but that it would take time. It would take time. That's the other thing. We tend to be very demanding, right? So I can't even tell you how many people come up and tell me, and like, I followed all your tips. I got ready. I talked to my dad for an hour.
Oh, gosh.
And all he did was talk at me, and I asked him questions, but he never asked a question back.
Right.
And so at the end of the hour, they go, forget it.
I'm done. Didn't work. Yeah.
Hang on. You gave him an hour? And that's it? Like, on your terms, you have no idea how heard that person feels by you. Like, when we finally get asked questions by someone that we feel has never understood us, how long will it take? How many questions will it take? How much time being heard by that person can undo the story we have told about that person never listening and never understanding? It'll take a while.
Right.
You just don't know.
Well, and I think about it, I think what you're articulating is, and it's the way that I think we approach things, maybe even in our American culture to some extent. Like we're not prepped for long-term solutions. We're prepped for short-term solutions.
Exactly.
Right. So we think it's a conversation, right, as opposed to conversations, right? Like or even put it in sort of the macro of like conversation that doesn't stop when you stop talking. It just takes a pause until the next time, right? And then you can pick it up. And the idea is, I love your point about, can I keep the bridge, right? As opposed to burn it or cross it even. Like, can I keep the bridge intact enough that when we come back, that we've had a kind of discourse that allows us to keep coming back to this conversation, and maybe we can inch toward each other instead of what we want. It's like, well, this should be a conversation where we just run to one another and should be done. Right. Yeah. And we find this, we're in the racial conversation that we're having a lot too, is particularly as people talk about black people and white people and what they're thinking about. And I'll hear my white brothers and sisters sometimes say to a black person, like, okay, so when will this be solved? Like how long before we get to the end of all of this stuff that you're talking about, right? And I would tell them a lot of times, I was like, look, this is 400 years in the making, and I would say, a couple of years, not too long ago, is the first time that I felt myself, and it's just me and maybe some other folks I've talked to, as a black person, that when I talk, anybody even listens to what I have to say. Because people I feel like it's just coming out of nowhere. Like, I thought we were doing great, and all of a sudden this conversation is bringing it out of nowhere. And it's like, no, black people have been talking about this for a while, underneath. Like, we've just been talking about it away from you. And it's just recently that I can say, like, that anybody, when I start talking about it, instead of shutting me down, like, you know what I'm talking about, that they go, tell me more. And I'm like, I've actually never had a situation where anybody wanted me to tell them more. So let me start talking. And here's what I learned is I actually don't know how to tell you more in a way that you can hear it. because I've only been talking about it with people who are like me, or defensively, or I feel like you're not going to go. So I need some time to even work out my own rhetoric of how to even explain this to somebody who's not in my echo chamber, somebody who's not other, and somebody who is not sorted into certain places.
You just nailed so many pieces of this dynamic all at once. It's like amazing.
I'm really enjoying this interview.
Oh my gosh. No, this is great. You're absolutely nailing it.
This is Marcus's favorite.
That's so cool. This is great.
Be a little star
first of all,
next to it.
That question, tell me more. It's like everyone should have that in their back pocket at all times. Yeah. That is an extraordinary question. If you are in a conversation and your intention is to understand and to connect truly, genuinely, and build that trust, and you don't know where to go or what to say, tell me more.
Yeah.
That's it, man. That's it. And boy, everything you just said about, here's the thing, is like we often in a conversation, we really do expect, if I ask someone, why do you think that about guns?
Yeah.
When was the last time that person was asked? A lot of times our opinions are the result of our experiences. Yeah. They're formed somewhat unconsciously. It's been a journey, right? So for us to be able to explain it, first to ourselves,
right,
in that moment, and be like, yes, I got myself exactly right. This feels right. And then secondly, be able to articulate it in a way that this person who maybe I just met, or maybe I've known my whole life but has a lot of baggage. Okay, now I have to turn it into a language that this person can receive. These are difficult things.
Yeah.
And we expect a lot of each other, right? Like how many times have you been in that conversation where you feel so on the spot because you're expected to explain yourself, but you're not even sure that you understand yourself yet. You need to explore it. So how wonderful, what a gift it is for someone to come into that exchange with open, receptive curiosity that goes, feel free to think out loud for a minute.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold you to this.
Yeah, it's a rough draft. Like, just give me the rough draft version of it.
Yeah. If we can be in rough draft, we're all rough drafts. My friend Angel Eduardo says that all the time. We're all a rough draft. Be kind. Like, if we allow ourselves to edit each other in front of each other, then what we do is we end up writing the bigger story of us. And that's my friend Baratunde Thurston who talks about that. But that bigger story of us, if it's going to be edited to be as honest to the moment and to our culture and to what we all need to thrive together as possible, then we need to be open. And we're not going to be open if we don't have trust. We're not going to be open if we feel on the spot. We're not going to be open if we do that to each other over and over again. So one more huge tip that you probably saw in the TED Talk that certainly resonated a lot is when we want to ask, and I even use this as an example, when we want to ask someone, why do you believe what you believe? The better question is, how did you come to believe what you believe?
Exactly.
Because when you ask why, and there's some suspicion, some, divides.
Yeah.
It's I'm on trial. It's this person needs me to justify something really quick. What am I going to do? Well, option one is I'm going to go find the talking points that I've heard others take shelter under from social media or from the news. And they're probably like slogans and memes and whatever. I'm going to throw them at this person like I'm certain about them. Okay. Like that's only so useful. But really what often happens is if you're in that state of threat, right? Why do I believe what I believe? Well, because of this. And then the other person goes, well, those are terrible reasons. Here are my reasons. And then all you do is a showdown of reasons until you yell and it all blows up. If you ask, how did you come to believe what you believe? You're asking for someone's story. Yeah. And the great part of that is everyone is the world's reigning expert on their own story.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not fake news. You can't go to anyone else. Like, listen, And then it's really cool because I don't know if this has happened to you, but when people come to me with genuine curiosity about me, you're giving me the opportunity to understand myself better. Wow. Which then helps me be a more secure and grounded person in my own life. Never mind this conversation. I get to understand myself better. Wow. So give me the opportunity to tell myself my own story because I'm usually not asked. Yeah. Which, by the way, is another thing that's really dried up in this culture of incuriosity is we think we know what we believe, but nobody's asking us. So
I was just about to say, hidden in what you were saying is sometimes we actually don't know why we believe what we believe, which is what actually can spur along this new curiosity that you may not have entered the conversation with. You may have came in very sure, and then when asked a good question, probing self-discovery question like that, you may find out, well, you know what? I'm not quite sure how I arrived to this, and that might crack open the door a little bit in ways that you don't expect.
Absolutely. And it does. It can take courage to say, I don't know, or to say, you know what? I think what I've just been saying is actually not quite right.
Right.
Let me try this other tap.
At least you'll say it in the car when you
leave the conversation. How dare they ask me that question?
Exactly.
What do I think about
Save faced in the conversation and get to the car and be like, okay, now what was that now?
But that's the other thing. Like when we're demanding in conversation, a lot of times people expect, like, I'm only having this conversation because I need to change your mind.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be okay until you change your mind on abortion. So in this 1 hour that I'm giving you, I expect to see progress. I expect to see you say that you're wrong. Whoa, that's a lot of expectations, people. Like, usually we do not show. Those moments of actually changing our mind are very private and personal. So we need to stop demanding to see them from each other. That's not how this works.
And people don't respond well in a conversation to being told they're wrong, or to even being cleverly shown they're wrong. You know what I mean? Like, so you can tell somebody they're wrong, but sometimes if you can paint somebody into a corner where they're caught, where they don't tend to respond well to that.
No,
because to your point, like, they want to be able to they want to be able to have that conversation in their brain later, right?
Yes.
And so you said something that I was thinking, like, what we're talking a lot about is a motivation issue for even having the conversation, if you will. And you talk about, we're not here to change anybody's mind, right? That's not something we can control, but rather, it's an opportunity for us if we have SOS and we're sorting people, right, and we're othering people and we're siloing. When we come into a conversation like that, the ideal would be to not try to change somebody else's mind, but really to change how we think about that person, right? Because that's the thing that we can actually do something with. Like, okay, I have this idea about what you think, but I need you to actually just not prove it to me, but I need to actually know what it is. And so that's the curiosity, right? It's just like, is this really where you are? Because again, most people, like, you're thinking about your parents, I think most people see themselves as the hero in their story.
Right.
Yes.
So they're not trying to be villains, although most of us are villains at times, right? But most of us are trying to do the right thing. We're voting in such a way that we believe is right. We're thinking of candidates that we think are doing what we want. So everybody has a hero thing. So so the curiosity is, okay, how did you come to the hero or believe this is a hero thing for you? Like, where did that come from? And usually you're going to find something very connectable, and
most people have
rational,
good intentions, or they're hoping to do the right thing.
Yes.
And they believe this is the path to that. Yeah.
And I wouldn't even say most people. All people.
All people? Yeah.
All people.
That's a hard thing, because I've run into people like, I don't know if you're really trying to.
Other than Lex Luthor, in comic books, even Lex Luthor.
But even Lex Luthor, he
Joker
like
wants to see the world burn.
He wants to see the world burn.
There is no such thing as even a fictional villain who doesn't think ultimately, like, what is it, Theranos in
Thanos.
Marvel
Thanos is a great version, yeah.
Thanos thought he was doing the world, the universe a favor by killing half the
people.
It's the stories we tell ourselves, but even our villains think they're heroes. And the only thing you achieve by trying to convince someone else they're the villain is making yourself the villain in their eyes. Which further affirms what they've been thinking about you anyway. So exactly.
Yeah.
Which is you see a lot in social media, this thing that we tend to do where, let's go to the sort of the political arena, the partisan fighting, and all of that we see, and many of us are very tired of. People act like it takes so much courage to attack the other side.
Right. Fight.
Or to criticize the other side.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah.
We're so polarized, and we're in such an enemy us versus them territory that's easy.
Yeah.
What takes courage is criticizing your own side. That's what takes courage.
Now you bring a really interesting point, though, because I know I can hear people going, all right, all the stuff we talked about thus far has this kind of one-on-one kind of engagement. I'm sitting across from Antwuan. We're having a conversation. Maybe there's not other people, whatever. But a lot of this stuff, we see on social media. So how does this?
Yeah.
I mean, is social media an appropriate place? Can it be an appropriate place? How do you make it an appropriate place? I mean, all of that in there. You know what I mean? Like, give me your thoughts, because I know you got to get asked about social media. So what are your thoughts for this on social media?
It can be an appropriate place, but to quote Angel Eduardo again, social media is the boss level of discourse just to get to video games.
Okay, video game mode. Yeah, like this is the hardest level. You've been working up to this moment, and you're gonna lose a couple of times against the boss.
Repeatedly.
It's gonna be real hard. It's possible, but real hard. That's really all we're talking about. But then there's a couple reasons for that, and one of them is that you don't know who's listening, and you don't get to witness their listening.
Okay.
Often, if I'm talking in person, I mean, I'm seeing you guys, right? We're on video. I'm seeing your faces. Like if I were saying something and I see Markus go,
right,
I'm going to stop and I'm going to go, wait, what's going on, right? We don't get to see that on social media. So what we end up doing is really sharply controlling ourselves, giving a lot of power to our preconceived notions of what other people are going to think about what we're going to say.
Yeah.
And then our extraordinary anxiety around belonging is just going to turn all the way up to 11. Like, who is going to excommunicate me from their
what job am I going to lose?
I really believe. Exactly. So all of that is turned way up, which basically means it's very hard to have a candid, really truly candid conversation on display like that. But the other thing is that these social media platforms have become very good at understanding our human psychology and hacking it a little bit so that we stay on longer and all of that. So basically what that means is if you feel pretty self-aware in your normal everyday life in person, like I know when I'm afraid, I know when I'm spending too long on something, whatever, you get on social media, good luck. Because so many little, methods and things and voices just come in on the side, and they come in and they sneak into your consciousness and you don't even know. And before you know it, and boy, have I talked to a lot of people who come to me like in tears about something they wrote on social media to someone they love.
Yeah.
And they regretted it the next day. Like, what came over me? It's so reactive. It doesn't inspire reflection. We don't get to see other people's faces. We see silly avatars and weird names. The internet is a non-place that makes us into non-people.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to rehumanize in those spaces. So I think it takes a lot of self-awareness, a lot of kind of presence of mind to just be like, this is a person. I don't need to respond right now. That's another thing that social media does.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this person just tweeted this? I got to tweet them right now. No.
You're like, no, you can actually sit back and breathe for a minute.
Go walk the dog, right? Because again, if you're in this place of threat and fear, it's probably not the best place to be,
Right.
Yeah.
If anything, that's the best part about social media in this conversation. Obviously there's some pitfalls and mines, but you get to walk away and do your SOS training, or an acronym we use is WAGE, where we talk about what if I'm wrong, ask questions, get a different perspective, and envision the best. You get to walk yourself through your acronyms, and then you get to come back. And I'm with you. Like when I'm dealing with social media, because of what I do, because of where in some ways I'm intentionally performative there, in how I handle a difficult person. I'm not trying to engage. I'm not trying to change their mind. I'm actually trying to demonstrate a way of listening for the audience who's watching. So I don't expect them to change. I just really want to change how other people might see engaging this person in such a way that they may try these things as well to see. And occasionally people actually respond well. Some people just blow up and leave, you know what I mean? Because they don't know how to engage like that. But social media creates that. Now, I want to ask you though, in the kind of little time we have left here, one of the things that we're doing in the midst of Threaded is we have this Just Start engagement, right? So Threaded is our organization around racial conversations and things of that nature, and we're encouraging people to just start with something, right? Our organization started with one guy in the midst of the Ferguson situation with Michael Brown. He wanted to get a different perspective, and so he called me. This was a white dude. He called me and said, "Can we go to lunch and talk about this?" Wow. And it was just one decision, one thing that he did, and it ultimately led to this podcast, all the things that we do, whatnot. So we're encouraging people as they listen to the podcast, it's commercial in the midst, like go check us out. wearethreaded.org.
This is the ad, people.
This is an ad. Is like, we want to help people just start. And part of it is just starting conversations. But starting conversations can be very difficult, right? We have our own journey curriculum that we facilitate, train people to lead the conversation, but it creates a space where people can have this conversation around this in very biblical ways. But I remember, particularly in the political space, several years ago, I get invited to this thing called Braver Angels. And I had to go online. I had to fill out. There's a sense of where you had to claim a red or a blue, right? And this is in the political space, Democrat or Republican, a red or a blue. You tell at least this was what it was when I was going through the first. You say kind of what side you're on, and you get to come into this conversation, and there's a facilitator there that allows people to have discourse, controlled discourse, across a political issue. I think my first one that I went to was around immigration. I think another one I went to was around this recently about Gaza and Hamas and Israel and things of that nature. And of course, like I'm putting an intro into Braver Angels, which is ultimately the organization you work with, the Braver Way your podcast is connected. Can you tell the audience just a little bit about that org, that setup, so that they can see if they want to get into this conversation, maybe where they can just start to some extent?
Yeah. No, Braver Angels is out not to change people's minds on the issues, but to change people's minds on each other for the reasons you were talking about earlier. That thing from my talk that I said sort of surprised me with the reception that whoever is underrepresented in your life will be overrepresented in your imagination. For a lot of us, that is true across the political divide. And so Braver Angels, what we're out to do is help people find opportunities in their own lives to build trust with the other, with people that they see as being so different and potentially a threat, so that they can see what's really there. And what's really there is so often a meaningful relationship that maybe you thought you were drifting away from, but that you can find a way to repair, or it's an illuminating conversation that actually helps you understand, an issue in a way that fits you better, People often are afraid that, no, all these like bridge building movements are about coming to the middle. I don't want to come to the middle. It's not about coming to the middle, Yeah. There are extremely productive, healthy, incredible, and persuasive ways to be very partisan, meaning like really on the extreme end, maybe what somebody might call the extreme end of some political spectrum, and be so clear and candid and receptive and respectful when you communicate what you believe. Like, you can run the world if you can do that.
Yeah.
So it is not about tempering down your politics. It's about learning how to hear and be heard. So we have workshops. It sounds like you've been to some of our debates. Those are our signature event. We've got people, like hundreds of people from all over the country, who take turns speaking in the affirmative and the negative about some very divisive resolution, about Israel, Gaza, about immigration, whatever it is. And the structure really works. It's designed to do everything we talked about in this conversation. Get you away from that place where you think it's really us versus them, I've just got to win, and put you into a place where, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. Now I understand my own point of view better.
Yeah.
Cannot tell you how many of these debates I've come away with. That's the biggest gift, is I understand my point of view better because I've been able to hear my fellow Americans talk to me candidly about their own experiences on this issue. It's so cool. You don't get to see it in the media. I've been in media my whole career. I've been a journalist. Look, I can tell you the incentives on media, not really stacked toward this level of public understanding. We have to do that for each other. And Braver Angels is, from what I can tell, these debates in particular, man, there's nothing like them. So check them out, braverangels.org, and go to the events tab. We've always got something coming up, including workshops for skills building to cross the political divide in your family and all this other stuff.
Yeah, and it's a really great, again, each time I've gone, one of the things, particularly the last one, which was Israel and Hamas, it was a bigger group than I had been in the first one. And for anybody who's interested in doing, you can go and you can just listen.
Just listen.
You know what I mean? You can pass on, you're like, I really don't have anything to say. Okay, cool. There are people who come regularly to the debate that know how to do it really well. And what I think is really fascinating is I saw people who were clearly on the opposite sides, in the extreme, but they were able to communicate with the other person in ways that seemed not just cordial, but friendly even, as if they hang, and there was a sense that they hang out other places than just this debate. And yet they were, on the opposite sides of things. And I thought that was a really encouraging thing to just witness. We talk about in our racial conversations, we'll have people from different racial categories and whatnot. And I remember when our organization first started and we had to get up and we'd have to get up in front of audiences and do Q&A, I'd have to say, hey guys, we have to be careful how we engage with one another on that stage because we know each other really well. So occasionally we can say things about one another from a racial standpoint that we can get away with in our own discourse, but the other people can't, they're not quite there yet. And because, but we've earned that right to be able to engage that. And so I've noticed that in the midst of Braver Angels, And again, you can pick a side and you can just go and listen. And I remember the first thing that got me when I was at the first one I was at around immigration is something that a woman said. She goes, okay, this is somebody who is a conservative Republican. So do you Democrats just believe that the border should be completely open for anybody to come in? Right? Because that's where she thought it was. And then to hear people articulate the nuance around the border that doesn't get into the media, I think really transformed her mindset around how she now thinks about quote unquote Democrats as a whole around that issue. Right. And so I think that that's just been such a, I highly encourage it for anyone who's engaged or wants to. And again, from a fear standpoint, just start is sign up and go listen.
Yeah.
Just go and listen. You don't feel like you have to get it. Just listen, and you'll learn just from the listening.
It's a small step.
But it really is meaningful. And what happened with me, years ago before I started working at Braver Angels was kind of that. It's like I went to one of these debates. It was about COVID lockdowns back in 2020.
Oh yeah.
And I had learned so many things that I thought, wait, if I was this wrong about people on the other side on this issue, what else am I so wrong about? And it turns out everything. We're not informed about other people's perspectives. Right. We absorb news, and we think, many of us think we're very well informed on the events of the day. We're not informed about other people and their perspectives. And we're not going to be able to build a great society until we learn how to do that, how to be informed about other people. And that's really going to change things.
And that is ultimately what color commentary is for. To offer opportunities to look through these different lenses that we have, right? The colorful lenses that people come to a conversation with, the opportunity to be able to look through those lenses in a friendly, and particularly from our space, with a reset button, if you will, of Christianity as a place to kind of lock in and go, can we start here? And then see how we see the world, not only just through a Christian standpoint, but through our other identities that come together with us. And so it's such a pleasure then to have you, Monica, on the show.
So great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Such good conversations, so many good tips coming in, I think, for the audience to kind of snack on, if you will. Go back and listen to create more acronyms around. I love it. Very in on all
Send
that stuff.
Send us comment your best acronyms.
Yes, I'd like to hear other people
in the comment section.
I would actually later. Once we're done with this, I want to hear what the best 10 acronyms that we have for Thread. I want to hear what those are. Monica, before you go, I mean, obviously you told us about Braver Angels, braverangels.org. Jump in, go to the events page, check it out. Anything specific about you that you want people to connect with, or places they can find you?
Oh, yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Moni Guzman, MoniGuzman. That's also my website, moniguzman.com. Kind of has all of it all pulled up. And then, of course, A Braver Way, the podcast, running through the election and a little bit after. So check that out at braverangels.org/A Braver Way.
Fantastic.
Very cool.
Very cool. Hey, good conversation. Thank you, Pepper, for the question. I think a lot of people were really interested in that, wanting to hear that. Sure. Shout out to all the folks in here, Shmevin in the engineering booth over there. Antwuan, always good to have you in here.
Yeah, fun times.
We can't. I think.
And you.
Well, thank you. That's
you.
Very kind of you.
You can leave your acronyms at the door, though.
All right, we're going to talk about that offline. Monica, thank you. If the people could, they'd be clapping. You can't hear them right now, but they are. We're so excited to have you here, and just want to continue to see you do great things and watch you do other stuff that you go as you go forward. And for the listener, thank you, and the viewer, thank you for being here, always jumping in on Color Commentary, Christianity in the Public Square. We've been talking about this discourse and political discourse and how you can engage that even more. So continue to jump in, go back and listen to other episodes. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you get reminded of it, and keep coming back and let people know. As you know, part of our Just Start campaign that we're having is we want people to just start and educating themselves. You're doing it by being here and watching it and subscribing. We want to get 1,000 subscribers in here, even more so than that. So we're getting that number moving. So let's keep that going as we switched over from our podcast version to the YouTube. We want to get people in this space and move them over. So if you're still on the podcast, that's fine. Listen in your car, do your thing, but jump over here, come over here and get in here so you can show some love over here so that you can get even further stuff that we're creating over here for Threaded for you and your education as you just start your journey or continue it wherever you are. And And I know you're continuing your journey, and color commentary is a big part of that colorful conversations by colorful people about Christianity, culture, and race. I'm excited you're here. Remember, as you go out, look through those colorful lenses of other people and stay colored.